All right, everyone. At the moment, we see the fruition, actually, of a globalist shill campaign. It's a Disinfo campaign. It's multinational in form. It involves the corporate media, which is partially multinational, partially homegrown. It involves Silicon Valley, which is sort of the same, roughly. What we're seeing is that right now they're trying to cast the New York Post off as a tabloid, which is funny because it's one of the top papers in the entire U.S. by circulation. Now, I thought that if you criticized the corporate press, you were an evil conspiracy theorist who hated the First Amendment. It was funny because, like, the USA Today, which I believe is smaller than New York Post by circulation and certainly doesn't date to the early 1800s, was calling them a tabloid, far right, saying that there was a Chinese or Russian smear campaign, and they can't really decide whether it's China or Russia. The two big bugbears of conspiracy theorydom. It's either Chinese agents or Russian agents. Now, the funny part is that there's evidence that people associated with Biden are in cahoots with these particular foreign entities, and yet they try to claim that, I guess the new thing is, like, Bannon is involved with some reasonably, like, Trump-friendly Chinese firm or expat or something, and they're claiming that the dirt on Hunter Biden was talked about beforehand, and this is evidence of some vast right-wing conspiracy or something. That's Disinfo itself. The funny part is that there's a Disinfo campaign to call the Hunter Biden email story Disinfo, specifically from Russia, the ever-present grave threat to all Western civilization, evil Vladimir Putin, number 11 economy in the world, I believe, as of recently, and then China, which is a little bit more of a legitimate threat. We know that the Chinese are constantly hacking U.S. Department of Defense computers, trying to infiltrate U.S. industry and so forth. That's very real. It's an ongoing threat. That being said, I'm not seeing a single shred of evidence for any of the weird claims by the legacy media with regards to the New York Post. And keep in mind, the New York Post, at the end of the day, is legacy media. It's just another legacy media corporation. It's a mainline newspaper and site. It does have a conservative lean to it. It does have a right-wing view, tacitly supports Trump in the general sense. That being said, if there is no other outlet that's willing to actually report on a scandal that is potentially bigger than Watergate, where the FBI has requisitioned hard drives from the son of a presidential candidate, purportedly showing emails that show a Joe Biden that is culpable in foreign influence peddling for profit, that would be damning. It would also be illegal and disqualifying as far as Biden's candidacy. That is a major story. Instead, the story that you're getting from most of the legacy media is that it's a conspiracy theory, it's disinformation. Only one person so far has even bothered to ask the question of the candidate himself, which I would think would be a no-brainer. You asked Joe Biden, well, is it true? He has so far, after 3 days, not denied it. In my mind, that is proof positive that the story is true. Now, of course, if the FBI actually requisitioned this, Giuliani's saying he has proof in the form of Hunter Biden's attorney trying to requisition the hard drive. What more do I fucking need to determine that the stuff on this hard drive is legit? No attempt to deny it has been made by the campaign itself. The only people that are denying the veracity are people like at the WAPO and at the USA Today and other Democrats. Well, it's a distraction. Trump wants to distract you from the fact that there's a recession. Trump wants to distract you from dead COVID patients and stuff like that. Well, that's a straw man, if I ever heard one. That has nothing to do with the Hunter Biden issue. To the point of massive suppression, and keep in mind, the people that are doing the suppressing are billionaires. Most of the legacy media firms that are involved with saying this is a conspiracy theory and gaslighting the story and so forth, using their weasel words, most of them are owned by parent companies that are not based entirely in the U.S. I believe that includes Fox as well. They're multinational, the globalistic corporations. Globalistic corporations, at the end of the day, have a vested interest in having a weak neoliberal president who's not going to push China on trade, who's not going to rock the boat, who's basically, it's going to be predictable. Going to do what past presidents have. Again, the last time we had a president who seemed to be reasonably independent was Reagan for the first few years he was in office, after which corporations bought him out. I don't know what dirt they had on him, or a family member, an associate, or what happened, but the reasonably independent populistic Reagan, by the end of the first term, wasn't really populistic anymore. The Gipper had, in my opinion, sold out by then. No offense, Reagan family. I know one of his sons is a big-time liberal, and the other one's like a conservative pundit. It's really funny. He's like, can you imagine the Thanksgiving table in that fucking family when they get started about old grandpa's Alzheimer's diagnosis, which Joe Biden shares. But it's a disinfo campaign. It's definitely propaganda. I mean, you see, the shilling is quite open. It's very transparent, actually. If you look around the internet, you're going to see a lot of botting. You're going to see a lot of people who fundamentally, and look for this. When you bring up the Hunterbiden emails, look for two things. Whataboutism, which is they'll start talking about something Trump supposedly did 10 years ago, which is, usually bullshit, or they'll strawman. They'll insinuate that you're just caring about Hunter Biden being degenerated, and that there's no larger story there beyond Hunter Biden. Well, Hunter Biden's a crack smoker. He cheated on his dead brother's ex-wife and got a stripper pregnant and did weird things. What is meaningful in the political context has nothing to do with Hunter Biden beyond he happened to be dumb enough to leave his laptop at the repair center long enough for it to be legally requisitioned. And I still find it funny when the Silicon Valley firms are using no hacked materials as the excuse to suppress the story. Nothing was hacked. Again, this hard drive appears to have been legally obtained by Giuliani's lawyer based on the fact that the legal owner of it at the time was the repair shop owner, who made a copy of it knowing full well the FBI wouldn't do an investigation. It appears to be that that is actually the case. The FBI got the hard drive, squished down any possible investigation, and sat on it for political reasons. This would comport to the behavior of the FBI that we can establish with the Russiagate nonsense, where we've got, a foreign agent peddling conspiracy theories in the literal sense, managing to get them through the mid-level ranks of the FBI all the way to the FISA court to get rubber stamped by the deputy AG, who probably was not entirely aware of the ramifications of the situation, because that's the way the FISA system is meant to work. It's meant to be a Fourth Amendment workaround, let's face it. This is shady stuff, I would think. Any accredited, legitimate journalistic firm would at least ask Biden a softball question about this. It says Stephanopoulos didn't bring it up. Nobody is. Bo Erickson's the only one that did, and then his own supervisor's like, why don't you ask him about how he feels about Giuliani working with Russian disinfo agents? Well, is it Russian or Chinese, and how are you establishing that they're even involved? I'm seeing, okay, there was a YouTube video by a Bannon-linked group from some weeks prior. That just establishes that Bannon knows things and has a loose lip. But that doesn't mean that there's any sort of foreign collusion. That means that Bannon pals around with a lot of people. He's an influence peddler too. And it's not exactly, it's fairly common knowledge. When he was sitting there smugly smiling behind Giuliani in that photo, I thought that was pretty funny. It almost seems like a thinly veiled threat to the Biden campaign by Giuliani and so forth. Basically, we know more than you think that we know. So ha ha ha, and then basically challenging him to respond. By the way, Biden is technically very adept in not responding. You remember what happened with the NSA releases with Snowden? And you remember how like Clapper and all those were coming out, and he would give them enough rope to hang themselves, because he'd do one little release and know, formulaic sense how they're going to respond, which is saying, oh, well, it's just metadata. But then they showed that it wasn't. Then they showed that it wasn't just foreign agents. Then they showed that it wasn't just phones. Over and over again, the NSA and similar groups were caught out lying because they responded. They should have just said, well, we've got no response to this story. We're not going to respond on key details of U.S. intel or something. Instead, they ran damage control and accidentally fucked themselves. Now their spying apparatus has been largely torn apart as useless, partially because of what we know from Edward Snowden. Otherwise, it would have become permanently enshrined in the bureaucratic system and cost us billions of dollars every single year to really nothing. It doesn't stop a single attack. The Disinfo campaign keeps churning, and it's going to keep going for the next 2 weeks until the election. They're going to do everything. They're pulling out all the stops to stop him, but you do see like Wolf Blitzer and a few others have occasionally broken rank, it seems, and Bo Erickson and a few others. There are some cracks appearing. Some of these people, I think, are hedging their bets, and they don't want to be the ones that were the most obviously and transparently shilling for Biden if the hammer falls. I think that they're beginning to worry that there's a possibility that Biden gets crushed out by this. Like, you had new polling there that showed like a 3-point swing in the national average, and now you have Biden's campaign manager that's saying, oh, no, it's actually, the polls are overrepresenting us. We're not ahead by double digits. Well, Jesus, why even bother looking at the polls then? By the way, Biden should fire her, I suppose. That's about all. Peace out.